Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. 2016 will mark the 10th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the 25th anniversary of Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, General Recommendation 18 on Disabled Women. It will also be the year in which the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities will adopt a general comment on women with disabilities. What wonderful interaction. It is encouraging that in 2015, inclusion as well as the rights of persons with disabilities has been addressed in the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action and the 15th anniversary of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. Moreover, there is explicit reference to persons with disabilities in the adoption of the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Development and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Yet, this is no time for complacence because normative efforts will only bear fruit if actual practice is there, and that gap has to be filled. It is estimated that 1 in 5 women live with disabilities, and economic and social status of women and girls, violence against women and girls, and harmful gender discriminatory practices are among the factors that explain the higher prevalence of disability among women, 19.2% compared to men, 12%. Women and girls with disabilities remain at the margin of decision making and work on gender equality, and they are basically invisible in the decision making fora that influence the world at large. While progress has been made toward gender equality and the empowerment of women and towards the rights of children and persons with disabilities, the limited evidence available points to the fact that women and girls with disabilities generally fare worse than men and boys with disabilities and other women and girls. It is recognized that women and girls with disabilities are 3 times as likely to experience physical and sexual abuse, and they have less access to social services and support systems. If they are refugees, indigenous people, persons in situations of conflict, and persons living with HIV and AIDS, the risks are even greater and compounded. For too long, women with disabilities have been invisible, both to the advocates of women's rights and of disability rights, which has increased their vulnerability. In the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, member states resolved to build inclusive societies, protect human rights, and promote gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls, and committed to work for a significant increase in investments to close the gender gap and strengthen support for institutions in relation to gender equality and the empowerment of women. Member states also recognize that people who are vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, must be empowered, and no one should be left behind. Of significance for women and girls with disabilities is that both gender equality perspectives and disability are mainstreamed strongly in the goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda. Goal 5, standalone goal on gender, aims to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls and its 6 related targets, as well as the systematic mainstreaming of gender equality throughout the framework, and provide the opportunity to address the needs and priority of women and girls with disabilities. Furthermore, most of the targets with specific reference to disabilities of persons with disabilities also include references to gender or women. For example, target 11.7 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, by which member states committed to, and I quote, by 2030 provide universal access to safe, inclusive and accessible green and public spaces in particular for women and children, older persons and persons with disabilities. As we prepare for the third International Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development in 2016, let us use this target as an advocacy tool to ensure that the discussions on the urban mobility and accessibility agenda are undertaken through the lens of empowerment, and that the new urban agenda addresses the rights of persons with disabilities, paying particular attention to the rights and needs of women and girls with disabilities. Also, as the discussion towards the full, effective and accelerated implementation of the 2030 agenda continues, of particular relevance is the target to enhance capacity building, support to increase significantly the availability of high quality, timely and reliable data disaggregated including by gender, age and disability, and the mention that follow up and review processes at all levels must also be inclusive, gender sensitive and informed by, among others, data which is disaggregated including by sex and disability. However, and as it has rightly been stressed by our Executive Director Pumzile Mlambo Nuguka, and the data on their own will not change lives, but we will not change lives without them. So, this is critical. While gender and disability data are collected by many countries, most reported data and statistics on disability are not disaggregated by sex. It is therefore our must together to improve the availability, accessibility and use of gender statistics to inform policies, advocacy and accountability for delivering gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls, including women and girls with disabilities. To ensure the inclusion of women and girls with disabilities first, in addition to gender related information, disability related information must be collected in surveys, for example, through the use of questions developed by the Washington Group on Disability Statistics. And second, at the analysis stage, indicators must systematically be disaggregated and reported by sex and disability. UN Women commits to continue to promote the production of disability statistics and when available use it in its research and work, including in the context of Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender equality and the empowerment of women. Through our joint dedication and commitment to this cause, women and girls with disabilities can be assured that their rights are well protected, they can live free of violence and discrimination. Thank you for your attention.